Hello, this is Pastor Chris, and this video is intended to be a set of tutorials on how to make our worship videos, the videos that we at First Congregational United Church of Christ in DeWitt put up online so that everyone can see and in some way participate in our worship services, using the computer that is in the back of our sanctuary. Now, as I said, this is a set of tutorials, so there are going to be some fade-ins and fade-outs, and I've tried to divide it up into little helpful chunks. I also need to say that this is kind of my first time really doing this sort of thing, making a tutorial video where I am doing the thing while talking about doing the thing in a way that is clear and organized and all of that. So I thank you in advance for your grace and your patience for any little problems or challenges that may show up along the way. And with that, let's get started. So, when you get to the computer in the back of the sanctuary, you will see a screen that looks something like this. Maybe not exactly like this, but close. On this screen, open right now, are the three pieces of software that we use during worship. On the left over here, we have Proclaim. This is what shows the slides on the screen in front of the sanctuary, and sometimes even shows some slides or some content on the video. Over here, where my mouse arrow is now, we have PTZ Optics. That is the software that controls our camera. Lets us pan and tilt and zoom and all of that kind of stuff. And in the back here, kind of behind everything, we have vMix, which is the software that actually records our worship service. Kind of everything gets fed into that and recorded. And the first thing we have to do before we make our final product of a worship video is close all of this, because we are not going to use any of it to make that final product. So PTZ Optics is the easiest to close. We just click that little X up in its upper right corner. Proclaim has an extra step. If you look up at the top, you'll see this kind of red pill that says on air. And the fact that it's red is telling us that the slides are on air. That's why we're seeing them in our video at the front of the sanctuary. So the first thing we need to do is take the slides off the air, and we do that just by clicking that button. And now they're off the air, and we can close by clicking the X in the upper right corner of the program. And finally, we want to close vMix. Now you'll see up here we have some more red. Says record right there and record down here, and that means that it is currently actively recording. Now, if we were making a real worship video using what I'm recording right now, it would be super important that we stop that recording before we try to use that recording to make the worship video. So let's click the record button down here. It will ask if we want to stop recording, and we click yes. And then we can click the X in the upper right-hand corner. It'll ask if we're sure we want to close. We say close. And now here we are on our nice, clean desktop. On our nice, clean desktop, we have a column of apps and folders over here. These are kind of all of the things that we normally use. And you can see on here the things that we just closed. We've got Proclaim right here and PTZ Optics down here and vMix up here. The software that we are going to use to make our final worship video product is DaVinci Resolve, which I'm probably just going to call DaVinci through the rest of this video. So the first thing that we want to do now is open that. And we'll do that simply by double-clicking that icon. This will take just a second to load everything up, and it will give us this screen. This is a list of all of the DaVinci projects that we have going on. And you'll notice that over here we have a thing that is called Untitled Project. We can just ignore that. And we have worship video. We do not make a separate project for every worship video. We simply use the same one over and over again and switch up the content. So I will double-click worship video. And it will load that up and bring me to the main DaVinci screen. Let's start with a quick little tour of the DaVinci screen so that you can kind of see what we're working with and where you can do some different things. I'm going to start here at the bottom with this little row of icons. Each of these icons is a different part of DaVinci. Here you have media, here you have cut, here you have edit, here you have fusion, color, fairlight, and deliver. We really only use two of these. Edit, which has some blue and green lines with a red line down the center, and deliver, which looks like a rocket ship. So right now we are in the edit screen. Where my mouse arrow is now, over here on the lower left, we have all of our effects and generators and titles and filters and stuff like that. We'll use a couple of these, but for right now you can mostly ignore this area. Above that, we have the media pool. This is where all of our stuff that we're going to stitch together to make a final product lives. And you can see right now we've got a couple of things. We've got this file called Capture 22 April 2023 or something like that, and a folder called Core Assets. I'm going to click into that folder for just a minute. So double-clicking on that folder takes me in, and you can see I've got a bunch of stuff in here. This is the stuff that appears in more or less every single one of our videos. So we've got a logo slide, a credit slide, a little bit of video where I talk about sharing our stuff, some other bits and pieces. So later on, if you find that you lose anything that is normally in one of our videos, you can find it right there and put it back in. But right now, I don't need that. So I'm going to take it back out to the main area, which I do by moving my mouse arrow over to the left a little bit and clicking where it says Master. Then we have kind of this big section on the right. At the top, we have two video screens. The one on the left is showing me whatever I have selected in the media pool. So if I go over here, I can move my mouse along and see bits and pieces in there. Now we can use that for some kind of fancy stuff, but we're actually not going to. We're just going to kind of ignore that area. Over on the right, I have some video that shows wherever I am on the timeline. So let's take a quick look at the timeline. We'll go into more detail in just a minute. Under these two video screens, we have the timeline. This is where all of the stuff that we are stitching together to make our final product goes. And the important part for right now is this red line. This is our playhead. It's kind of like a needle on a record player. I know I'm dating myself by making that reference. Wherever that needle is on a record is the sound that is playing. Wherever this playhead is on the timeline is what we see up here on that upper right video screen. So if I move the playhead around, that also moves. And if I jump to a completely different area of the timeline, say back at the beginning, and drop the playhead there, I see something entirely different. And that is kind of the main part of DaVinci that we'll use, are all of these bits that you're seeing on the screen right now in edit mode. Let's take a slightly more detailed look at the timeline. Now I've already talked about this red line. This is the playhead. And like a needle on a record player, it is where we are on the timeline in the bits of video that we are stitching together. And wherever that is what I will see up here. Then you'll see that we have some different materials on the timeline right now. On the top of the timeline, we have stuff in blue. Things on the top of the timeline, or in blue, are visual things. So, for example, if I move my playhead back here, we can see I've got the part of a video where I talk about sharing our videos. And if I move up here, we've got our slide that says this is a worship service. And as I move in over here, we have kind of the main video. On the bottom part of the timeline, and in green, we have audio things. So back here, for example, and this, unfortunately, you can't see or hear on this video, we have the sound from me talking about sharing our video. And over here, we have the sound from the main video. So you can remember that we always have blue visual stuff on top of the timeline and green audio stuff on the bottom of the timeline. Now, the second thing to notice is that some of our stuff is kind of close together in the middle of the timeline, and some of our stuff is a little spread out. The way that I have this set up is that I always put the things that are in every video kind of close in the middle on video 1 and audio 1, if you look over here. And the stuff that is different in each part, so usually the main video, further out, spread more out on video 2 and audio 2 if you look over there. The reason for this is that if I put something on video 2, right here, it won't overwrite stuff that is further down on the timeline that is on video 1. It'll just kind of go over it. And then I can move that stuff on video 1 where I need to move it. And we'll actually see that a little bit later. But that's why we kind of have two separate video things and two separate audio things. Finally, I want to show you how to move around the timeline. The slowest way to move is by grabbing the playhead and moving it around. And that's a perfectly fine way to move if you don't want to go very far very fast, if you're kind of doing some fine work. Another way to move around the timeline that's a bit faster is using this scroll bar down here. If I click on that little pill, I can move wherever I want at kind of a medium-ish speed. I know this looks very fast, but it's not as fast as it could be. I can go all the way to the beginning to the end. And this, by the way, is the example of why we have those two video things and those two audio things. Because if I were to put a longer video in here, right here, it would just go right over these bits. So if I keep it out here, it won't overwrite these. Very convenient. If I move using the scroll bar, I don't move the playhead. It stays exactly where it is. And I can find it by looking for a little red stripe on the scroll bar, right there. Wherever the playhead is, that will appear. So if I move the playhead by clicking up in this ruler area, just like that, and then I move this out of the way, you'll see the playhead is now way over here. And I can do that kind of anywhere. Move to where I want, click and move the playhead, and that appears down here. So no matter where I am, I can find the playhead. The fastest, and one of the most convenient ways to move around the timeline, is by going up to those video screens and taking this line right here, which is the playhead, and moving it around pretty quick. So I can move and kind of scroll through and find more or less where I want to be. and then move around using the playhead directly to get where I want to be. And that is really more or less how the timeline works, or at least the tour of the timeline so that you know where things are. Video things in blue on top, audio things in green on the bottom. The red line is the playhead, and you can move around the timeline by moving the playhead, or using the scroll bar down here, which does not move the playhead, or using the bar up here, which does move the playhead. So before we start editing a worship video, I want to show you what our worship videos look like on the timeline so that you can kind of see how things are set up. So we always start with our logo slide, and underneath that, Old Hundredth playing. That's the tune that goes to the doxology. Then we have the bit where I ask people to share our videos, along with the audio of me asking people to share our videos. Then we have this little bit that just says, this is a worship video. Then, I'm going to move the playhead to move over here, so you can still see over here the little slide that says, hey, this is a worship video. Then we have the main worship video, which, as you can see, is offset here. So all that stuff that's in every worship video is in the middle. Move over a little bit, right along here, really close together. When we get to the main worship video, the thing that is that Sunday's particular worship, it's offset like this. That keeps going until we get to the end. When we have another logo slide and our credits. The logo slide is important. That tells us, or tells people who we are. The credit slide is really important because it has our information on why we can stream or record or put up these hymns, as well as the scripture readings that we use in the service. So that's kind of how our worship services look. We have those 3 bits at the beginning, our logo slide, me talking about sharing our videos, and the slide that says it's worship. Then we have the main worship video, and then at the end, our logo slide again, and our credits slide. So if you need to put together worship from scratch, that's kind of what it looks like. And you can find that on more or less all of our worship videos. Now that we kind of understand where things are in DaVinci, and we kind of understand the timeline, we can start the process of actually making our worship video. And the first step in that is going to be getting rid of the old video that is in here. In this case, I have just a video that I put in here, which is a funeral I did a while back, and that's what we're seeing up on this screen up here. And if I move the playhead, you don't actually see much change because, because we started recording plenty early and I haven't moved that stuff out. But here you can kind of see me walking around and that kind of stuff. So we obviously don't want that video in our new video. So we are simply going to select that, and if we select the blue visual stuff, because that's associated with the green audio stuff, it selects that too. And then I'm just going to press backspace on the keyboard, and that will delete that. So it looks like I've cleared that bit out, but I want to actually go all the way down and check just in case there's anything left in that space where the main video would normally go. And as I go down the timeline, oh, I see that there is a little bit. So I want to select that too and get rid of that. And that was simply there because there was a cut somewhere along the timeline in that video. Somewhere I had separated that into two distinct pieces that were stitched together, and we were seeing kind of an artifact of that. But now it looks like we're good. At the end here, I have just the stuff in the middle that's in every video. And at the beginning, I have just the stuff in the middle that's at the beginning that's in every video. And in between, I don't have anything at all. Now I need to bring the new video that I'm going to work on, the thing that was actually recorded from worship, into the media pool up here so that I can use it on the timeline. To do that, I'm going to go down to this little folder icon at the very bottom. That's the File Explorer. And in this left-hand column, I'm going to find vMix Storage, because that's where vMix puts all of our stuff. And for my purposes here, I'm going to grab the capture from April 30th, which is a worship service that we had. I'm just going to drag and drop that into the media pool. Very nice and simple right there. And then I can close that. Then I'm going to drag and drop that same file into place on my timeline. So as you can see, I could put it in the middle here. Now remember, that would overwrite anything else that's in the middle. I don't want to do that. I could also bring it way out and create a whole new video, audio kind of channel there. I don't want to do that. I just want to put it right where the old one was. And you can see that I can drag it around. I'm going to make it so that it kind of snaps like that, right against the stuff that comes right before it. In this case, it's a little funky because I think my playhead is somewhere there. But now it's snapped right up against that worship slide. And now my video is in DaVinci, ready to be used. So now we have the video that we want to work with on the timeline, offset from the material that is in each and every video. But you'll notice, if I scroll over just a bit, we have a lot of material that goes on before the service. I usually start recording, because of my schedule, about a half an hour before the service actually starts, and that means that that announcement loop that is playing on the screen is about the first half an hour of this video. I don't know when someone will have started that for you, but regardless, we don't really want the announcement loop for a really long time. So, using this scroll up here, I'm going to find a spot that looks pretty close to the beginning of the service. So now at least I'm in the service. There we go. So as you can see, kind of the beginning of the service is over here. And if we bring the playhead back a bit, we can get to that spot where the welcome sequence begins. And I'm going to put my playhead right here. This is usually where I have our videos start the service. So now that I'm where I want to be and where I want to make my first cut, I'm going to come up to this toolbar that's right above the timeline, and I'm going to select the Blade tool. I can also select that by pressing B on the keyboard. And I know that's selected because it's red, and because when I hover over anything on the timeline, or at least over the video on the timeline, it looks like a blade. I'm going to come over to my playhead and click right there. Then I'm going to come back up to this toolbar and select the arrow, or I can press A on the keyboard to do that. Now if I move my playhead out of the way, you can see kind of a little dotted line right here, and you can see my cursor changing. And the same dotted line appears down here. That's where the cut is. Now, a little bit about this cursor change. There are 3 different kind of modes that the cursor can be in right now. Actually, 4, I guess. One of them is this arrow. But when I hover near the cut, I get these different symbols. So this one, with a rectangle and kind of a bracey thing and an arrow pointing to the right, controls the length of the clip on the left. So if I select and move that, it's lengthening this clip. It's just grabbing more of the stuff that was already there. And if I move back, if I let that go, so it's like that, and then do that again and move back, it just keeps moving that one clip. Similarly, if I go over to this clip and near the cut, I get this little thing, which is the same symbol, but the arrow is now pointing to the left, and that moves the clip on the right and lengthens it and shortens it. So I can put that kind of back there. I can also have this symbol that looks kind of like a bridge on a map with arrows either way, and that lets me control both at the same time. So if my clip is just a little off, or if my cut is just a little off, I can move it just a little bit like that. So that's kind of how the cursor changes around a cut. Now, we've made our cut, or at least our first cut, and we need to get rid of all this stuff that's, kind of before where we want the video to start. So using my arrow, I'm going to select that, and it selects both the top and the bottom, and just press backspace on the keyboard. Now that's gone, but we have a big gap because we just took that away. We didn't fill it in with anything. So again, using my arrow tool, I'm going to select my video. Again, that selects the audio stuff too, and click and drag so that I get back close to the beginning where I want the actual video to start. And it helps if you kind of keep moving the mouse, it'll keep it moving. Now I'm back to the beginning, and I want to just snap that where it goes, right up against the little worship slide there. Then I'm going to kind of do the same thing at the end of the video. So I'm going to go all the way back to kind of where the end is. I'm going to bring my playhead over here. And where I like to make the final cut and kind of go out of the video, kind of end everything, is when 2 things happen. So one, I'm going to just let us do this slowly. One is where the light goes out of the sanctuary, and the other is where the slide on the screen becomes our logo, like that. So as you can see, the light has left the sanctuary. The screen switches to the logo. And again, I'll take my blade tool, come down here to where I want to make my cut, click to make the cut, get my arrow tool, select the stuff that is after the part of the video I want to use, and press backspace on the keyboard. Now, you'll notice that the stuff that is usually at the end of our video isn't here. That's because, in this case, the main video that we're using is shorter than what was in here before. So we have to go back and find our end of video stuff. There we go. I want to select all of this. I'm going to hold down Shift and select each individual clip. My 2 visuals and my audio, that will automatically select the other stuff, which you'll understand in just a moment. Click and drag it. And get where I want to go, and let it snap right into place. So now I've got the video set up, so I've got my beginning part of the video that's in everything. and then just the part of kind of the main worship video that I want, and the stuff at the end of the video that's in everything. There's one more step to taking care to kind of making this a whole thing. And that involves, I'm going to deselect some stuff and move my playhead out of the way. These little boxes right here that you see overlapping some video clips. Those are my cross dissolves. So a dissolve is something that just kind of makes it move smoothly from one video clip or one visual image to the next. So I'm going to take this one out just to use as an example. I'm going to get rid of that. Right now, if I let this play, so keep your eye up here to see how things happen, it just kind of jumps like that. That's not very nice. So I'm going to grab cross dissolve, and I just click and drag, and I'm going to place it right there so that it overlaps nothing over here and the video clip over here. And I'm actually going to do the same thing right up here. And now I get a nice smooth little transition. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. And as you can see, we already have it on the part of the video that is in every video. And I'm going to do the same thing right there. So it overlaps nothing, and it overlaps the video. And now I get a nice, smooth transition. There's one more step before we have a final video that we can export out of DaVinci and upload to YouTube. And this one requires a little bit of explanation. So I'm going to find a good spot in the video to talk about it. So here is actually a nice little moment. One of the challenges that we have is that our mics are not always set at the same levels, and people have them at different distances from their mouth and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully we will have fixed some of that by the time you are doing that. But right now, we have someone at the lectern getting ready to do the call to worship. That's my guess given where we are in the video. If you look down at the green line, remember that's our audio line on the timeline, you'll see this white line right here. And when I move my cursor over it, it becomes those two arrows. Over here, you can see a bunch of little squiggles on it. That's sound. Over here, you don't so much see the squiggles. So that means whatever is happening is very soft. And if someone is playing the video, they might not be able to actually hear it. So, like I said, we'll hopefully have this problem solved by the time that you're working on things. But we want to fix it right now. So I am going to grab my blade tool, and at the beginning where it looks like our liturgist is about to start talking, I'm going to make a cut. And I'm going to do the same thing where squiggles return. In this case, it's a little ways away. So here I've got squiggles, but they're still pretty small. So I'm going to keep going to where they get bigger. There we go. So here's me talking again, which means that the squiggles have gotten bigger because I am louder. And I'm going to make another cut right there. Then I'm going to go back to my arrow tool and see where this becomes, when I move the arrow close to the white line, it becomes those two arrows. I'm going to click. I'm going to bring this up so that it kind of matches a little bit the squiggles that I see elsewhere. Now, we have to do it this way because we don't have the speakers on in the sanctuary, and the computer feeds into the speakers. So while I'm doing this, I can't actually hear anything. I've got to kind of go visually, which is a little difficult. But that looks pretty close and is probably audible. Then I'm going to look for any other places where that might be the case. Now, as I said, hopefully we'll have the issue with, say, the lectern fixed by the time you're doing this. But one of the places where we always run into this is during hymns. Because while people at the front are mic'd, the congregation isn't. So when the congregation sings, it's hard to hear. It's not getting picked up as well. So I'm going to find another spot where it looks like the congregation might be singing. So I'm using some context clues here, right? It looks like this is what it usually looks like when my sermon is over and we're in this moment of silent reflection. Here I'm speaking again, probably saying, here's the hymn that we're singing next. And there I'm quiet. And as you can see, this line down here is flat, so nothing is going on. Or at least whatever is going on isn't being picked up by the mics. So I'm going to select my blade, which I did with the keyboard this time, pressing B. I'm going to make my cut. I'm going to find a spot where the squiggles appear again. Got it right here. Make my cut just before that. Select my arrow. And make this louder. And of course, there's another hymn in here. So I'm going to find that spot. That's our offering. Oh, that does mean we have the doxology somewhere in here. So if I'm being very picky and very specific, I'm going to just kind of do this throughout the thing. Find those spots where the congregation is doing something and it's not being picked up by the mic. And make them a little bit louder. And here we've got someone speaking at the lectern again, and that's not being picked up well enough. And here, since I'm close to the end, I'm not going to worry about a final cut over there. I'm just going to make the bit where we're singing our closing song a bit louder. And now I should have it where all of the audio is at roughly the same level. There might be some little differences on the final video, and that's okay, but people will be able to hear just about everything. It does look like it gets a little loud there, so I'm going to come back. Go. Bring that down just a little bit so that the squiggles kind of match what's happening over here. And now I have it so that I have just the parts of the video that I want. The audio is at more or less all the same level. I've got my beginning bit that is in all the videos, followed by just the section of worship that I actually want to show, and my end bits that are in all the videos. And everything is set and good, and we have a wonderful final product that we can now put out into the world. Now that we have this beautiful final product, this wonderful video, we are ready to deliver it. Basically to export it from DaVinci in a file that we can upload to the internet. And in order to do that, we'll go to the other part of DaVinci that we use. Remember, right now we're in edit mode. And on this bottom bar, I'm going to move over to the rocket ship that says deliver and click that. That brings me to a new screen, and there are two parts of this screen that you need to be aware of. One is over here on the left, which is our render settings. The other is this little box kind of in the upper right hand, which is our render queue. As you can see, we have a job in our render queue. I'm going to close that. I'm going to select this X so that there are no jobs in the queue. Now I'm going to leave that area and go back to the left. So these are my render settings. I'm simply going to select YouTube, and I'm going to put a file name in here. In this case, I'm just going to put worship. I'm just going to call it worship video. That's the easiest thing to do. I'm going to go down to the line below that that says location and has a blank, and browse. And I'm going to make this very easy on the left-hand side here. I'm going to select desktop and click save. And then I'm going to go to the very bottom of this left-hand bit and select add to render queue. Now you can see this has appeared over here on the right. And now I simply select render all. And it will take it a little bit of time to render. In this case, it looks like it's going to take it somewhere in the area of 13 or 14 or 15 or 16 minutes, somewhere in there. And this is a good time to just walk away and do something else for a little while. And in fact, we're not just going to hang around and wait for it to do that. So if you stepped away, you can tell that the job completed reasonably quickly. Right up here it says it took about 17 minutes. So you can kind of set it to do its rendering and step away for 15 or 20 minutes. When you come back, it should be done. And now we are done with DaVinci. So as a kindness to the next person to do this, we'll click that X in the upper right corner of this job so that our queue is clear. We'll set this back to edit mode. Oops, sorry, that's cut mode. To edit mode. And then we'll close out DaVinci by using the X in the upper right corner. And we can see our worship video right here on the desktop at the bottom of this column of apps and files and folders on the left-hand side. Now that we have our worship video exported out of DaVinci and on our desktop, the last thing that we need to do is upload that to our YouTube channel. We'll start by going to this left-hand column of apps and files and folders and that kind of stuff, and we'll double-click Microsoft Edge, which is our web browser. Now when that opens, we should be on the YouTube page, and we should be logged in. If for some reason we're not on the YouTube page, we simply put youtube.com up in here, and it will take us there. And if we're not logged in, we can tell we're logged in because we have our green logo right here. If we're not logged in, the login information is by the computer, so we can simply log in. In this case, we're going to click there on that logo and go to YouTube Studio. Once we're here, we'll click Create, Upload Videos. Then we'll get our file, the thing that we just exported, click, drag, and drop right there. That will start the uploading process. Now, there are a bunch of details to fill in, but we make this very easy. We go to where it says Reuse Details. We click that, and we just select Last Time's Video. We will reuse all of this and change the date. In this case, I'm uploading April 30th. The worship service from April 30th, so I would leave that the same normally. I'm going to change it because obviously I already uploaded that. So I'm changing that in this case to May 7th just to have another date. It's already going to be on our worship services playlist, which is perfect. And I want to upload a thumbnail. So let me show you that a little bit more. So here's where the thumbnail is. I'm going to click Upload Thumbnail. On this left-hand side, I'm going to go to Worship Assets and select this worship slide. That'll end up being the same for every video. And click Open. And it'll upload that. Then, right up here, I go to Visibility and select Public. Now, here's the thing. Our internet at the church is not super fast, and it's going to take quite a while for this video to upload. As you can tell, the entire time since I started uploading the video, and all this time I've been talking, 1% has been uploaded. This is probably going to take a couple of hours. So I'm simply going to click Publish. Leave all of this open, and without turning the computer off, walk away. It'll upload, it will publish. Once it's published, it will appear on the website. All of that stuff will kind of happen automatically. So I don't need to be here for that, and it will just take however long it takes to upload, and then it'll be live. And some other time during the week, we can come in, close stuff out, turn things off. And that's it. Now you have made and uploaded a worship video.